a norm in the future, how do I build teams remotely in a better context? Because one of the excuses that I'm giving right now is that it couldn't have been better because I was working remote. How do I form a relationship with somebody from a different culture, sitting across another screen, and build a team in Singapore when that person's in Thailand or that people is in Thailand? How can I do that better? And I think that's something that I want to try and figure out. I'm trying to salvage what we have right now. I think it went okay, but I think it could have been way better. And that's definitely one thing I want to try to figure out next.
Mm. And what are some of the early successes that maybe you have discovered, or maybe some of the more effective tactics or strategies you may have encountered about building remote teams?
Okay, so I would say that this is my first remote team. I've never built a remote team before. I've always been building physical teams, and I think the core strength, at least for me, what I think one of my strengths is forming relationships, and that really helps in building teams because I get to understand them, they get to understand me, we get to form a connection and a bond that it becomes, okay, I'll give you an example. I used to play paintball. They call it speedball in Singapore. It's basically a five-man sport, and as a five-man team, we train every weekend to understand each of our roles. So we have a front row, back row, middle row, and because we all have different roles, and we've been training every single week, there's a synchronization that you know what the person behind you is going to do, what the middle guy is going to do, what the front guy is going to do. Same thing for design teams. Because you're there, we meet each day, we understand their culture, we understand the way how they respond to things, we understand the way how they speak. There's a sense of prediction in that sense, a sense of family, I would say, I guess, teamwork, that psyche is there that we would know how to handle things differently. And I think what kind of disrupted that was that when we went remote, that whole entire structure that whole entire way of how I used to do things changed. And that was the tricky part. So I'm trying to figure out now, it's like, how do I get that same emotion, that same connection, but remote? And I think that's a very challenging piece that moving forward, I think maybe a lot of companies will have to face because it seems like we're gonna be doing this for a while. Even my company, we're not going back to the office anymore. It's 100% work from home. So, it's interesting.
Yeah, that brings about a lot of issues, as you mentioned. While people are working remote, everyone's trying to grow. Maybe let's start with in the past, right? You've built three teams, you've done it physically. What has worked well for you when you're building UX design team? Uh, would you apply it to building any team, or
Mm,
is it more specific to UX design teams? Yeah.
okay, so I would put it in two different sections. I would have building a team or building a connection, building a team, and then there's building the implementation team, which is the UX team. So implementation could be anything, right? Marketing team, UX team, whatever team. Okay. So the first thing I always like to focus on is, I mean, and I think it's a standard, when you have somebody that comes into your team or a leader that comes into your team or a new person that comes in your team, what is the first thing that you do? You try to get to know that person. You try to create that bond. You try to create that relationship. You try to understand that person's vision or mission or goal in life. How does it tie to the work maybe? How can you all work together as a more stronger unit? And I think that's the first step of being a team. And that is something that I apply every single time I go into not just a team, a client, meeting somebody. It's about being genuine. It's about understanding why are we even here in the first place? Why are we stuck together in this group that's supposed to be working together? What's the point of all this? Do we see eye to eye? Do we have the same goals? Do we have the same direction at least of where we're going? With that in place, then we kind of get an understanding. Okay, this is where we're going. This is the direction of where we're going. We understand each other. We come from the same background. Then how are we gonna do it? And that comes to the implementation part. And then that's when we bring in the roles, the responsibilities. What are we missing? Who do we need to hire? If we can't hire, what do we do? All those other stuff comes into next first. But I think to answer your question, for me, it's always building the relationship first. It's always understanding Why are you here? What are we doing? Actually, I do one thing that maybe it's a bit weird. Somebody in my previous client commented like it was kind of weird. Every time a new designer or I hire a new designer or a new designer joins, one of the first things I ask is, what's your what's your 5-year plan? If they don't have a 5-year plan, what is their goal in life? And it gets a bit personal at the start, especially like you don't know the person, and then this person's asking you, "What's your goal in life?" But my main point of asking that is really to find out, can I help you align your goal in life with what we're doing in this company? Because if I can find the alignment, I can, in that sense, ignite that passion to work to find purpose in our company or in our client. um, if you say that your goal in life is to meet people, then I want to make sure that you're client facing. I want to make sure that you're in a team that is moving forward, is talking a lot. If you're telling me that you have something that you're trying to figure out, but you have an idea of what you like, I want to try and match that as a leader. I don't want to put you in a place where you're not growing or you can't see that you're not growing. I think that's another interesting thing. It's trying to make sure that, um, in that sense, I'm helping to give that vision or a door to how you can see things differently. And I think that's kind of like my job as a lead as well. It's not just directing in the implementation side. It's what you're doing here has a meaning, has a purpose, and that's what I think is the core piece when starting a team. I hope that answers. I babble on a lot.
No worries about that. I mean, that's a really good point, and I think it's so important to start with the why, right? Which is essentially what you're doing. You're trying to align their why with the organization's why, and I don't think a lot of leaders do that enough. And I really appreciate that you shared that and you're doing that. And just a quick sharing for those of you who just joined us, we have Preston over here, who is a product owner at PebbleRoad, a digital consulting firm which works for different clients in the region of Asia Pacific. And Preston himself has built 3 user experience design teams, which I'm getting him to share some of his learnings over here in this podcast. And well, Preston, so on the flip side, I want to ask you, like, what should you avoid doing? What would you avoid doing now, knowing what you know after doing it 3 times?
Mm, okay, so I can't really. Okay, I'll try to answer that in two parts as well. I think it's different for everybody. Everybody by right should know their limits in terms of personal space, or just their limits in general. Um, One of my issues that I realize is that it's hard for me to let go. So my job is to create teams. My job is to build relationships. My job is to form connections. My job is also to scale them and to let them go when they're ready. So the hard thing for me, that I try not to do, or it's a bit of a contradiction. I need to build relationships, but I can't build it too deep. That's the hard part for me. And and it's also hard as a team leader when you're starting something and you're putting everything that you have to build that team. Um, Either it goes bad or it goes good. Bad hurts you. Good, it also hurts you, because eventually your people are gonna grow. They're gonna learn. They're gonna become better than you. They're gonna leave. They're gonna go somewhere better, and you need to be ready to let go. And I think that's one of the hardest things that I had to learn at the start. Learning how to let go people and not be selfish and hold them back.
Mm.
And
So
that applies
it's
for everything. Yeah.
I think that's such a great piece of learning, and what I hear you say is cultivating this attitude of being somewhat detached, but also not being too attached to people, because people will grow or people will leave. And I wanted to ask you, when you said not build relationships too deep, how do you know? How do you know you built a relationship too deep?
I'm learning that every day. I mean, for me, it comes to a point. I think it's a mentality. It comes to a point where you need to understand yourself that you have to give away your selfish desires. You know, whatever they're thinking about, you want to grow a team that's so good and keep it for yourself, or you know, whatever, you need to throw all of that away. If your main vision, your focus is on the end outcome, which is, let's say, for example, um, I mean, a team is about people. So if it's about, I want to make the best team, it means that I produce good designers and I attract good people that also want to come in and I grow them, means that I need to be ready for that. And if I'm in that state where I'm ready for that, means that you won't have to set a limit of when is too deep, what is too, you know, what's the limit of forming relationships, because at that mindset, you're already ready to let go, and you're already taking in, letting go, taking in, letting go. The hard part is the endurance, the that term, I forgot what I was gonna say, but that um
That's okay. I'm sure
yeah,
we'll come
yeah.
back to you. But yeah, like you said, it's about letting go. And I think that's also not easy for many leaders, especially if they are new UX managers in this view. I wanted to ask specifically for UX design teams, are there anything, say, a new UX design manager should look out for or be conscious of when they're building a UX design team? Because we have a
mm,
lot of aspiring practitioners as well as practitioners here listening.
mm. I so I think I like to use, I think it's natural. It's only natural when you're in a team and you're building a team, you realize the gaps. And as every UX manager would know, uh, there's no unicorns in the industry. Even if they are, they're probably exhausted and they're dying, or they work by themselves because they're so rare. And even if you try to do everything, you can't get every single piece right. I used to be a unicorn like back when I was a designer as well. You can never do everything perfect. Okay. And it will come to a point where you start learning that everybody has a particular role that they have to play. Everybody has a core strength. Of course, they should know everything, but everybody has a core strength. And usually, what I like to do is I like to build my teams around multiple core strengths. I like to hide. First of all, I thought one of the main things I like to do is identify the gaps in a team, in an organization, for whether or not it's organization maturity or it's going to be team maturity. What am I looking for? So as a UX manager, let's say we look at a team perspective. Um, the people that I have, what are they good at? What are their strengths? Maybe I have a designer that's really good in visual representation, visual or visual arts, or there's a visual eye. So maybe, okay, I'll categorize him as maybe, and maybe his passion's also in the visual eye, in the visuals. So maybe I'll categorize him as a UI designer. I have another person that's looking at always wanting to solve problems, always wanted to figure out how do I ideate, how do I solve that. And then I'll put that under another category. And then I'll form a whole bunch of categories and realize, okay, I'm missing pieces. And usually it's around the area of research or testing or analysis. But nowadays it's actually the opposite. It's we have more researchers and analysis, but then less people that actually want to solve the problem. So it really depends. And then once you have that structure of your people, their strengths, their core skill sets, core skill sets, then you'll notice the gaps, and that's who you start hiring. That's who you start looking for, and that's usually something that I do. Just identifying team maturity, identifying design maturity in the team. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I love that analogy that you brought in about it's almost like building a puzzle, right? And
Mm,
you are finding like everyone is a different piece in that jigsaw puzzle you're trying to build, and you're trying to make your team as well-rounded as possible. I think that's so on point. We have a question from Elaine over here, and she's asking that as a designer in Singapore, as a UX designer, she's asking how would you scope out the role for each designer in the team for a product company? Like, do you have a process of like maybe scoping out the role or writing the job description or
I think it's different. Sorry, this is one of my cats. I got three.
awesome?
Being being annoying. I think it's different for every hiring manager. Okay. Um, I'm gonna reply it in what I would do, but I'm not sure if a lot of people do it this way. So like I mentioned, right, there's gaps, right? Sure, I can hire by role, but there are two other factors as well that I like to look at. I like to look at potential, and I also like to look at one thing which is called chemistry. Um, and potential is the easy part. You know, you see where they want to go. Is it aligned? Do they have some sort of expertise? What's their passion of how they're going to fuel it? That's easy. Chemistry is the interesting part. Um, Chemistry could be chemistry with my team, chemistry with the project, chemistry with the people, and maybe my team is lacking that chemistry. Maybe the client side that I'm going to put the designer in is lacking that chemistry, and that could be what I hire you for as well. So it really depends on what where and what this situation is. I have a lot of I do mentoring also now and then for designers as well. I get this question a lot. And it I always tell them it really depends. You know, if you're putting up a portfolio, you of course you're showcasing your skill set, you know, and that's great. But it's also going to be quite standard unless you overly think things and the recruiter likes to see that kind of things and then read your whole entire set of information. But one thing that I always not get my designers to do, but ask my designers to do is show personality. You need something that differentiates you from every other designer that's coming out from every other school in Singapore or in Asia. But what we're looking for as managers, or at least what I'm looking for as a manager, is I'm looking for that missing piece in my team. Not just in terms of skill set. I'm looking for somebody that's gonna maybe call everybody out for lunch, the glue that holds people together. Maybe somebody that's gonna help another designer branch out more or explore more because of your certain skill set that's complementary. Maybe I'm looking for somebody that's feisty to bring fire into the team. There's so many things, and your personality is the one that shows that. The way how you would approach design, the way how you approach problems will be the one that shows that. And I so going back to the question, right? Highlight yourself. You are the most unique. You are unique. Okay. And good hiring managers know how to spot good people. When we say we manager recruiters spot good people, it's literally we want you. We don't want your. I mean, we want your skills as well, but we're looking at you. You are the factor. If you're a shitty person and you keep every job you get fired or you leave because of whatever, then and you don't get the job, maybe it's because it's you. It's not your skill set. You could be amazing. I've interviewed amazing designers and had really shitty attitudes toward thing, and there's no way I'm gonna bring them to my team because I don't want the rest of them to behave like that. It's just stuff like that. It's chemistry.
That's so on point. And I wanted to ask you, was there any application that you received as a manager that really stood out and that you could really sense the person's personality? How did he or she do it?
Uh, Actually, I thought you're gonna go to the opposite, and then like, why didn't you hire the person? And then I was like, oh no, is that person gonna be here?
Let's focus on the positive.
Okay, let's look at the positive, right? I was so pissed off that this was one time. So usually when I hire people, and I sit inside interviews, I grill them on the questions that they don't think they will get. They won't ask. Like I will really look at purpose. I'll look at um desire. I'll look at passion. And this one person, right? I think one of my designers tipped them off for what I usually would ask. So every question I asked, she had a perfect response, and I was so angry. Like, how can you be so prepared for this? Um, yeah, but she basically answered everything. So I went all the way to um, trying to utilize what they did before and how is it going to affect our company, even though it's so far. I want to see if they could see further than their problems. One thing I like to ask also is I like to when people leave their company, I always like to ask them like, why do you leave the company? What's the problem in your company? And then they'll tell me the problem. Then I'll ask them, why didn't you solve it? This kind of things. And then they get stunned and then they try to answer. But um, yeah, I mean, so yeah, there's this one person answer every single question on point, could see things the way how I would see things. I'm not sure if she prepared or she's really like that, but I hired her after that. I mean, at that point, it wasn't about skill anymore. It was about somebody that could see past the norm or see past the issues see further than that, has an understanding, in that sense, sort of a strategic mindset. And I think that was what I would always like to take, yeah, in my
Yeah.
teams.
Thanks for sharing, and I hope she's working out as a
Yeah,
hire.
yeah, she's still in the
Lovely.
place.
So we have another question, and or rather a comment. It was mentioned that it feels like in the corporate world, in order to gain new heights, Kari is mentioning, you eventually have to
Mm.
start leading and managing people. Unfortunately, my personality is not really suited for this path. Am I just perpetually stuck at being just a designer?
Okay, this is a tough question. Okay, we had something similar in my company as well, but let me put it this way: growth is change, right? Um, when you grow, mindset will change as well. Sure, at the start of it, maybe if it's not to your personality, it's it's fine. Usually a company would have a space where you can go into a senior role of whatever that you're doing. Sometimes if they don't have that and you're not ready to go to the next stage, you can go find another company that has that ladder instead in that sense for that one particular role to be an expert. And I think those companies that have that really value the skill set, and you should go for companies like that. But at the same time, there are companies where they don't have that in-depth skill set, and their method of growth is management, which is, yeah, most corporate, not I say most, corporate, some of the corporate agencies or corporate companies. When it goes to that part, right, you have two things that you need to figure out already. Um, is this for me? Am I ready to move to the next step, which is basically not say leading people, but overseeing things. I think it's a bit fuzzy, but I think there's three stages of growth as a designer. You have your um, I'm probably gonna screw up.
That's okay. Like, why don't you just
Uh,
give it a try?
something about tactical something and then strategic or something like that. There's three. I can't remember, or four. There's four levels of it. I remember that because it's like an army mindset. At a certain stage, you'll stop looking at your problems. Okay, so if you're a core, um, if you're a core expert in whatever you're doing, let's say this is your problem, you're so good at this problem. There's a certain stage you'll grow out of this problem to see things above, and at a certain stage you go even one more layer to see things above that above. Okay, my English is stupid, but heck it. Okay, that's growth, right? You're growing to see things at a more strategic level, and in your case, right, you have to look at two things. It's not about managing or leading people. It's about seeing things from a different perspective. When you start seeing things from a different perspective, naturally you will lead people, because you're going to be seeing things in a different light, and people won't be able to see that, and they need your help to see that. So if you have a role, if you have a path that you can go and just be really good at that one role, and they keep giving you pay increment that's so high, go for it. Be safe in that comfort zone and get free money. I'm all up for that. But if there's a place that encourages you to go up because they see the value in your leadership, they see the value in what you are doing, that you can see something more than that, don't take it as, oh, I'm gonna have to start talking to people, or I'm gonna have to lead teams. Take it as, people rely on me. My company relies on me to see things in a different way. How can I contribute that? And then slowly try to figure out, okay, that is one piece. Let's say you're really confident that, okay, company values me. Then I need to look at the personality piece, or the people piece. How do I start talking to people one on one? You know, uh, that's when you actually have to start going out to meet people, try chit chat one by one, meet people individually till you're comfortable. And you don't have to be like large scale people like Dalen or me, sitting in front of random people and talking to a whole bunch of people. Just do it individually, one by one. Even for me, I don't like conferences. I don't like all these large talks. I would rather have one-on-one conversations, because I feel it's more genuine and all that.
Are you an introvert, Preston?
Uh, I think I grew into one. When I was younger, I was extrovert. But that's a different story, because I was homeschooled and everything, so everything stacks up. But I have my reasons. Okay, but basically what I'm trying to say is that um, doing this, going being more focused, will help you grow certain things. Eventually, when the time comes for you to talk to more people, you talk to more people. Um, yeah, and let it run its course. Don't force it. I mean, you can force it, but you need to know yourself as well. I hope that answers.
Yeah, I like that analogy because I think there are leaders who are sort of asked to lead during certain circumstances, and because you're just the obvious choice, or it's also because you're the most qualified person, so you're asked to take on that leadership role. So I think there are so many different leadership styles,
Mm,
and as Preston mentioned, it doesn't have to be like a leader from the front kind of leadership. It can be a very soft and supportive kind of leadership style, as I'm hearing from Preston. So I'm sure you'll find it. But in case you still do not find this the path that you want to take, I think it's still possible to be a really good subject matter expert and get paid well for it. I'm sure there will be a company that value you for that. Yeah. We have a question from Lewis in
oh man,
Colombia,
I
and
read the
he's
question and I know.
asking about burnout. So, how do you manage burnout? And I'm sure this is even more pertinent during COVID. Yeah.
Louis, you're probably feeling burnout right now. That's why you're asking this question. I tell you, it's one of the hardest things. Um, I would say that is I can't. Okay, I'm winging it a lot, right? In this whole entire conversation, I'm sure if I prepared for it, I would like have like steps and all these kind of things. But there are things that every human needs to do. Okay, family, friends, uh, co activities, side activities, community. Okay, you need a bunch of things to help keep you grounded. Okay, I'm gonna pick out a few, right? Um, you need to have some sort of release. So one, I do two things. Okay, um, I'm afraid of heights, so I rock climb. Okay, so I do that to build my confidence, to build the mentality, to take away my mind away from what's happening in the world. Okay, another thing that I do is I play a lot of video games because it keeps me active. At the same time, it takes my mind away of things. So basically, what I'm saying is that you need to have activities. You need to have friends. You need to have a strong community that help you see the different line of what you're going through. Um, it is possible, but it takes a lot of effort. The activities help you to release. The community helps you to understand. And I think that's something that you need to have a balance in your life. And if you're not getting that balance, then I would say leave your company, because if you're not getting a balance, the most important thing is your health.
I think that makes perfect sense, and that's excellent advice for managing burnout from self. How about taking care of burnout in your team? Like, how do you help them manage burnout better? Yeah.
Okay, so this I would say this is a tricky part as well. So as a manager, um, if you talk about helping burnout or taking away burnout from your team, that basically for me, this is what I think. That basically for me means taking the load off them. Also, it means taking what they're going through, putting on myself. I have this other theory that I tell everybody. As a manager, your job is a shit filter. You filter shit so that your team doesn't have to embrace the full, yes, you imagine,
The full
okay,
works.
the full works of everything. Um, so I would say that um, helping your team, taking certain things that you know that you can do to help push the team forward, or to take away certain things that are aggravating them at certain areas. As a leader, you should know. Okay, you should know when your team is getting burned out. You should know what triggers them. And as a leader, also your job is to try and mitigate it in that sense. But the problem with that also is the more you take, the more you also feel burnout. So the challenge is, if your team is giving up too much, then the issue is also not yourself, it's the team. You need more people maybe, or you need a new structure, a new process. if you are taking a little bit and you can't handle it, then it's yourself. You also need to figure out how to release more or to find a better way to do it. But what I'm coming to is yeah, I mean, answering your question, uh, understand your team enough so you know what to take from them, so that you
Yeah,
can counter that.
yeah, and I think that's relevant because as middle managers, we also tend to put a lot on ourselves. And I was wondering, um, do you is it part of your practice to also like share your burden or share the problems with your team? And if so, like how do you do it? Yeah.
I'm gonna put it this way. I think the good thing about my personality is that I'm able to put things in a fun, non-serious but serious manner. I can downplay a lot of heavy things, and I think that's kind of maybe and I don't know, something that I have. Okay, everybody has different things, right? I think this is one of maybe my strengths. Like I'm able to downplay things in a good way. So heavy things that are coming in a good way, or maybe to reframe things in a good way, and that really helps for them and for me when things are going bad.
Do
Um,
you have an example to share? Could be a
it's,
made up
it's
one.
very it's very scenario based. So
Hmm.
let's say, for example, I don't know, we're going into a meeting. I'm giving an introduction. My designer's presenting something, and the stakeholder goes ape shit. You know, all over the place. Um, I can do two things. I can sit there and watch my designer crash and burn, blame it on that person, and then be safe because maybe the stakeholder loves me. Or I can step in to help to uh, highlight the core things that the designer is selling or the core things that the designer is good at, and flip it the other way to in that sense to question the stakeholder or to put it in a different reframe the way how the stakeholder is attacking or reframe the way how the stakeholder is conversing to the designer so the designer sees it in a different way. Another example that I do a lot and I realize is after a meeting, let's say it goes really bad or I think it goes well, but then my designer feels like depressed, right? And I start talking to that person, and then that person starts telling that perspective of how they felt or how they received from that meeting, and I realized they're just looking at the problem. So then what I tend to do is I tend to explain because maybe I have a bit more context. I mean, as a manager, your job also is to kind of understand everything, understand people and all that. So I tend to reframe my designer's perspective of how they're seeing things. So I would maybe bring up things like, this person went through something, or this person is actually going through something in the organization, which is why this is happening. That's why maybe, they're being hard on you or certain things, or because there's some backstory of a different product or a technology piece that is affecting what you have designed that is not countering that, and because you didn't know and they know, they're coming at you that way. But, if I did my job better and I told you this, or maybe if we knew about that earlier, we would have been able to solve that and we won't be in this mess. So just trying to make sure that I think ahead, reframe the way how they receive, reframe how it's being spoken to them. um yeah, that could be a way. Actually, I forgot your question, but
That's okay. I mean, I would summarize it by saying you literally just became the shit protector for your team member who almost crashed and burned during the meeting. And the fact that you also help reframe things, it almost seems like you play the role of a mentor or a coach to them and or even like a counselor, right? Like
mm,
because they feel a little sad or disappointed about
mm,
themselves. So yeah, I think that's very relevant advice in terms of helping your team deal with burnout. And you said you do it in a very light way. What do you mean by that? Do you joke with them or what do you do?
no, I don't think I think it's maybe my personality. Like I don't somebody once said something like this, like I can't tell whether you're serious or you're joking, and that's bad. That when I want to be serious, nobody takes me seriously. When I'm joking, everybody takes me seriously. I mean, like, what the heck. But I wouldn't say I put things across jokingly. I would say that um I would like to bank, or I would like to say that being a designer created enough empathy for me to understand things in advance, be able to speak things in a different way. I think that's a very uh, every designer, every I like to say every good designer. Okay. When once you're in the field, once you start working as a UX designer, you are going to generate empathy. You're going to learn things. You're going to understand things. You're going to see things. Whether or not you use it to fight people, stakeholders, or whether or not you use it to see things in a certain way to re-explain things or reframe things like what I'm talking about. Um, you will learn that skill, and I think that really helped me to communicate better to my designers or even to my clients as well.
I really love the point when you said using empathy. Like you can use empathy as a weapon, or you can use
Hmm.
empathy to build bridges. So
Yes.
that's really excellent advice.
Yep.
We have a question from earlier, and it was Zhu who asked that how did you become a product owner, and also to give some context, what do you do as a product owner in
Mm.
whatever role you're in?
Okay. Maybe I'll answer the first question first. Excuse me. So when I was a UX lead at Jardine Lloyd Thompson. It now got bought over by Marsh, but it's like a multi uh top three MNC brokerage or something. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
it's like a
Long, long,
conglomerate, right?
yeah, conglomerate. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
conglomerate. They own like huge amount of things. Um, and I was walking around the office one day and I saw this consultant working on a project. And I went and asked this consultant, like, what are you doing? And then he tells me, oh, we're building this new platform that solves A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then I looked at him, I'm like, I've been trying to push A, B, C, D, E, F, G for 2 years and nothing's happening. What the heck? And that point, at that moment, I realized the power of consultants. Somebody high up wants to make a change. They pay money, they come in and then they do everything. When people internal have been trying and slogging themselves, trying to push something small over the past how many years. And that moment on, I was like, okay, I'm going to start my own thing. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to be a consultant and I'm going to tell companies what to do. And as I was doing that, there's a bit of funny story. I wanted to hire designers to start up this mini agency to start doing this, and in the end, I kind of got poached in that sense. I went to my company PebbleRoad, wanted to hire people there, wanted to get to know the good people, then take them over. In the end, they sold me such a good story because they actually they're doing the same thing that I'm doing. And then I got sucked into the company. Okay, so I joined them. So as a product owner in PebbleRoad, right? Um, I wouldn't say our role is actually a product owner. I would say one of the challenges that we've had is we changed our role 3 or 4 times since I joined the company. I came in as a design lead, then it became uh, product something, and then now there was like some UX lead, and then now it's like product owner or whatever. Okay, if you look at the stuff that we've been doing, it's I would like, okay, my colleagues might not like to explain it this way, but I always like to explain it this way. I look at it as product ownership. Okay. Product doesn't mean a physical thing. Product could mean people. It could mean an organization. It could mean the thing that you're trying to solve. And ownership is talking about owning the problem and looking at ways, all kinds of ways. Doesn't matter if it's design, doesn't matter if it's tech, doesn't matter if it's, what outside of your domain. How do you solve this problem? Because problems are not just one singular piece at one place. They always spread. There's always root causes all over the place. And you have to identify that. And I think as my job as a product owner, I mean, I know normal product owner roles totally different. Technical product owner is very different. But for me, as a product owner, is to solve that problem. So I've been placed in situations where, sure, I build design teams, or I build them from scratch, or I come in to help them to rebuild their whole entire core product, or we're doing transformation workshops, or we're doing consulting onto mission, vision, and direction of where their company should be going. That has nothing to do with product owner in the sense that role. So we're a design studio. We solve problems with design. And that's what it is. Ultimately, I'm still a designer. I've always been a designer since the start. Designers solve problems. One of the guys I mentor, he has this phrase that he always loves to say. I don't think he's here today, but he always likes to say this thing where uh, a UX designer or a designer's role is to make the world a better place. and that's our job. If you guys ever get a chance, right, go read uh shit, what's it? Design is a Job by Mike Montero. He puts it in such a blunt, amazing, comical way about how important your role is as a designer. You're not just building screens, you're not just building a product. You're changing the way how things are being worked, how people are doing things. It's a very important role. If you do things wrong, you're gonna screw up people's life. And it's something to think about.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And it's also good to know that you're not in necessarily a traditional product manager or technical product owner kind of role. And it's interesting that you see product ownership as owning a specific problem. So yeah, it's definitely one of the key traits, and it's important. I was just wondering, you when based on the work that you do, and that's the saying over here, right? Product owner, one of the things they do is herd cats in the organization. And you're a cat owner yourself.
Yeah.
How does it feel like? Does it feel like herding cats, or how would you describe product ownership?
There's sometimes it feels like it's babysitting. It's not just hurting. But I think that's a bit negative. I really like the term mentoring. And I think over here at PebbleRoad, one of the things that we always mention is we want to inspire. And that's something that differentiates us from our competitors. We're not just herding you to the right direction or mentoring you even. Although that is one of our core pieces, we're making sure that you're ready before we even leave. But we also want to inspire you. We want to make sure that whatever that we're doing, the ideas that we're bringing in, the way how we're doing things, it ignites you to go, hey, we can do this. And I think that's what it feels like for me, or for us at least.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
No
And we
problem.
have one of the last questions tonight, and I think it's also from a new UXer, Machen, and she's asking, what's one key advice to a person who is starting out in his or her career you would give to your new hire? Yeah.
So usually, right, when people ask me that, and then I'm going to ask them a few other questions to kind of understand which direction they're going to. Then the response will be much better or whatever. But I mean, you can message me later. But it revolves around a few things, right? Like I mentioned before, your portfolio is key. It's a basic. You have to showcase. Sorry, I ate too much chili, whatever.
No worries.
You have to showcase your skills, right? That's a given. Then the other thing I brought up is your personality. But how do you even show your personality when you haven't even started the interview? So that's for later. The core thing in the middle is your drive. I always have people coming up to me and saying like, oh, can you mentor me, or can you help me with whatever, whatever, whatever. And I'm a kind of person that, okay, I'll just detour a bit, right? So when I started out, I didn't know that the whole UX community existed. I didn't know about, I think UXSG at that time was only like 1 year old. And I didn't know. I didn't even know there was a role called UX designer. I thought I coined it, kind of thing when I started out, because I came from a product design school. So everything is already in user-centric mindset. It's just that we're building physical products. Okay, but that aside, right? So because I came from that and I had to build everything myself, I expect, and I for me, a core for thing for me is I think people learn better when they learn by mistake. Okay, so one of the things that all these designers, they always ask me, like, what do I do starting out and blah blah blah. I say go and find your problem. Go and find your problem and go and solve it. You don't have a client, go find it. You don't have, you no client wants to take you, make it up. Go take the initiative to take something and explore how you can solve it. And that alone, right, gives a different view to how recruiters would see things, or how different people will see things. And then post it, share it. I know so many people in the design field that they don't have much experience, but all they do is post problems that they are trying to solve, and that brings them so much further than where I could have gone when I was whoever, and that just it just shows that you're hungry. And I think that's what, especially in Singapore, and sorry for all the international people in Singapore, it's such it's not say a rare find, but there's not a lot of hungry people than all the other designers around the world. If you're hungry, you will stand out. You will definitely stand out.
It almost feels like, as you mentioned, this mindset of ownership, right? It almost feels
Mm.
like having this mindset of ownership. And yeah, it almost feels like product ownership is like a state of mind, or being a successful UX designer is a state of mind. Agree or disagree?
I would put it this way also. Like I tried to give the three maturities of a designer or whatever, and I forgot, right? At the end of it, it's always strategic. Okay, because you see things in a different light. Your goal as a designer in the end is let's put it this way. You want to make the world a better place. You're gonna build something to make the world a better place. Your end game is what drives you. If you don't own that end game, if you don't own what you're gonna do there, you're never gonna solve that end problem because you're just gonna be building a thing. And that's what a product designer. Sorry, I mean I'm putting it bluntly, but that's what a product designer, a generic product designer, what a product designer does is they just go and build that one thing. Design. I don't care about anything else. I just design. But when you own it, means that you see what the outcome is gonna be. You see the vision of where it's gonna go. That's where you look at things differently. And these people that are driving this, they own the problem. They see the problem and they really want to see how they can change it and look at a whole new perspective. And that's why they have totally new ideas, totally super long articles about one small, simple, I don't know, navigational structure that changed the whole way of how things will work. This they own it. Um, Dylan's right, ownership.
Yeah, I like that. And I think one thing I wanted to ask you as well, in a slightly different context, because you were sharing from the perspective of someone who's trying to get into the industry. Let's say it's the first 90 days, or it's the first 100 days, right? They call it the critical period. As a new UX designer, right? This is perhaps your first UX design job. How would you help this person be like successful in the organization, or how should he or she, think?
So I would say there's two. I keep saying two things. No, I think there's two things in my mind right now. Um, First one, I want to find out if that person is it already knows what they want to do, or doesn't know what they want to do. Okay, if that person doesn't know what they want to do, I want them to explore. In that first 100 days or 90 days, I want them to see the organization. I want them to understand what is going on and where would they like to go, where would they like to focus on. If there's somebody that already knows, then I already kind of know an idea of where I want to put them, and then I'll let them explore that area to go deeper. So that first 100 days and 90 days is, I would, I don't know if it's the right way to say this, but I would say it's finding your identity in the organization, who you are as a designer, and also I think one thing also your first job dictates where you go. It's very important. You have no idea how important your first job is. You go to a shitty place, or you go to a place that teaches you wrong values or morals, you're going to carry on to the next place, because that's what you learn and you bring it over and you think that's right. So your first job is very key in how you develop as a designer. And that's why if somebody joins, or previously, or in when I'm with clients that I'm hiring, when they do come in, I want them to explore and I want to find a place for them and the right people with them so that they can grow. That's kind of like my key focus for that first 100 days. Giving them an identity, something that they can own.
That's excellent. I'm going to ask you for a parting quote, but let me first quote Mike Montero, which you actually mentioned earlier. And in his book, he mentioned working with other talented designers makes you a better designer and is essential to your professional development, especially early in your career. There's simply no better way to learn your craft than to watch someone else practice it. So it's echoing your advice, Preston. Did you had any parting quotes for some of the newer designers over here,
I suck at codes.
or maybe a philosophy that you might share that could be useful for their career?
never take something at face value. As a designer, you never take research as face value. You always look at the evidence, you always look at the background to understand what has come to you. Same thing for your design life, same thing for even life in general. Something comes your way, something that somebody said, never take it face value. You're a designer, you've learned that. You learn how to read the evidence, you learn how to read the core issues. Do that in your real life as well. It will push you further than where you would normally go if you don't do that.
And with that, that was great advice, Preston. Thank you so much for sharing. And we will end off the live session. So thank you for joining us if you are tuning in on Facebook. For those of you who are on our Zoom chat, we'll stay for a couple more minutes for a closed door session, maybe a little bit of networking. But I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. If you're interested in change management, we have a webinar on that. If not, I'll see you next month. We have another design lead coming on the show to share with us his experiences as well. So thank you for joining us this evening or today if you're tuning in from somewhere else. And I wish you well and have a good day.